If you had told me the worst day of my life wouldn't be the day I was arrested, but the day I walked back into my own home after a year behind bars, I would have laughed in your face. But that's how life works. It doesn't hit you where you expect. It hits where you trust the most. And I trusted two people more than anyone in the world. My wife and my best friend. Turns out they trusted each other a whole lot more. Looking back now, the signs were always there. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet notes in the background of a song I didn't know I shouldn't be dancing to. But the real story, the one that tore my life in half, started with ink. Not the kind they used to write love letters. The kind that puts you in handcuffs. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning. The kind where you wake up thinking the worst part of your day will be the traffic on the way to work. Maybe a meeting that drags too long. You don't expect officers in your office doorway. You don't expect the word fraud. You don't expect your name to be the one on the papers. You don't expect the signature to look exactly like yours. I still remember staring at the document, the one with my supposed approval, my supposed authorization, my so-called decision. A transfer, a movement of funds, a completely illegal one, except I didn't sign it. I had never even seen the document before, but someone had. Someone who knew how I wrote every letter. Someone who had watched me sign contracts for years. Someone who joked once that he could forge my signature after a couple of beers. I laughed back then. I didn't laugh when they put cuffs on my wrists. My best friend, Daniel, stood in the hallway when they led me out. His face was pale, shocked, concerned. The perfect expression of a friend blindsided by his buddy's downfall. Except now I know the truth. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't blindsided. He was terrified. Because I was getting dragged away for something he had done. But in that moment I didn't see it. I was too busy wondering how my life had collapsed in a single morning. Investigations are strange things. They don't shout. They don't accuse loudly. They quietly collect, confirm, assemble, until there's a case. And you're the last one to realize you're the main character in a story you never agreed to be in. The prosecutors had everything they needed. Forged documents, my signature, transactions traced to my department. Lack of any proof I didn't do it. That last part hurt the most. Because how do you prove you didn't do something? Daniel offered to help. He stood by me, visited me, told my wife he'd never let me go through it alone. He looked me in the eye and swore he didn't know anything. And because I loved him like a brother, I believed him. Love makes you blind. Betrayal makes you see. But that came later. My sentence wasn't long in the grand scheme of things. 1 year, 12 months, 365 days. Enough to break a weak man. Enough to harden a strong one. Enough to show you exactly who's in your corner. My wife's first visit was full of tears. Hers, not mine. She held my hands through the glass, told me she loved me, told me we'd get through this, told me to stay strong. And for a while she kept that promise. Letters, calls, visits twice a month. Updates about our house, our finances, our life waiting for me on the outside. I clung to those visits like oxygen. She was my anchor, my constant, my reason to keep going. Daniel visited twice. Both times he looked nervous. Both times he kept checking over his shoulder. Both times he said he was working with my lawyer, trying to piece together anything that could help. I believed him then. God, I wish I hadn't. Around the 4th month, something changed. Her letters got shorter. Her calls grew less frequent. Her voice sounded tired, distracted, far away. I told myself prison does this to relationships. I told myself she was overwhelmed. I told myself she was just trying to cope. I told myself a lot of lies. Around the 7th month, she stopped visiting altogether. No explanation, just excuses about work, family, stress. I didn't push. Maybe I should have. By month 10, something inside me settled into a cold acceptance. The world outside was moving on without me. I thought that meant I'd come home to distance, to awkward conversations, to long nights trying to fix what a year apart had done to us. I didn't know then that the problem wasn't the distance. It was who she filled it with. When the gates finally opened and I walked out into sunlight, I thought the hardest part was behind me. Freedom tasted sharp, metallic, almost unreal. I stepped out expecting to see my wife's car, expecting her running toward me, expecting a second chance at the life I'd lost. Instead, I saw no one. Not her. Not Daniel. Not a single familiar face. Just a bus stop across the street and a sky that felt too big. I told myself maybe she was late. Maybe traffic held her up. Maybe she'd be waiting at home. I carried that hope in my chest like a fragile box. It shattered the moment I turned onto my street. There's a strange feeling that hits you when you walk back into a place you once called home. Like muscle memory mixed with disorientation. Like the bones of the house remember you even when the people inside don't. I walked up the driveway, suitcase in hand, heart hammering with something between dread and hope. The curtains were drawn halfway, not how she used to keep them. The porch light was on even in the middle of the day, something she never did. A pair of men's boots I didn't recognize sat by the door. My throat tightened. I unlocked the door, stepped into the living room, and instantly knew something was wrong. There were 2 coffee mugs on the table, a jacket that wasn't mine tossed over the sofa, a faint smell of cologne I'd never worn. My heart dropped, my chest burned, but some part of me still clung to denial. Maybe her brother visited. Maybe her father stopped by. Maybe. Then I heard a sound. Upstairs. A familiar voice. A man laughing. A soft echo of something intimate. Something unmistakable even without details. I froze at the foot of the stairs. I knew that laugh. I'd known it for years. Daniel. My best friend. My brother in everything but blood. The man who swore he'd never abandon me. The man who forged my signature. The man who let me go to prison for his crime. And now, the man in my bedroom with my wife. I didn't go upstairs. Couldn't. I stood there at the bottom of the steps, gripping the railing so hard my knuckles went white, listening to the sound of my life collapsing. Again. Except this time it didn't crush me. Clarified me. Betrayal, I realized, doesn't hit all at once. It hits in layers. First the cuffs. Then the silence. Then the truth. And there I was, at the bottom of that staircase, finally seeing the whole picture. Daniel hadn't just forged my signature. He had taken my freedom, my reputation, my year, and my wife. And they had both kept it from me the entire time I was locked away, fighting to believe in them. My body trembled. Not from rage, but from a realization so sharp it felt like a blade against my ribs. Everything I lost to the 2 people I loved most. But standing there in that quiet, heavy house, something inside me hardened. Not revenge. Not hatred. Something cleaner. Resolve. The kind a man only gets after surviving something meant to break him. I didn't shout. I didn't storm upstairs. I didn't give them the drama they deserved. I walked out, closed the door behind me, and took my first step into a future I didn't choose, but one I was finally ready to claim. When I walked out of that house, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have anger yet. All I had was a duffel bag, a year's worth of scars, and the realization that everything I had believed in was a lie. People imagine betrayal as a loud explosion. Mine was quiet, almost gentle, the kind of quiet that rings. I walked down the street until my legs stopped trembling. Sat on a bus bench with no destination in mind. Let the world move around me like I was pressed between panes of glass. I wasn't crying, not shaking, not falling apart. It was something stranger. My body was calm. My mind was sharp. My heart was numb. And beneath all that, a new voice inside me whispered, "Now you start over." I didn't call my wife. I didn't call Daniel. I didn't call my mother or my brother or the one friend who still believed in me during the case. The first call I made was to the only person who had been on my side when the system wasn't. My lawyer. I walked to a quiet corner near a gas station, leaned against the wall, and dialed his number. He picked up immediately, probably not expecting to hear from me on the day of my release. I told him everything. Not with emotion. I didn't have any left. Just facts. My wife was with Daniel. Daniel had been in my house. Daniel had been with her while I was gone. Daniel had forged my signature a year ago and walked free while I sat in a cell. My lawyer didn't gasp, didn't act shocked. He just said quietly, "I always suspected him." That hit harder than anything else that day, because it meant everyone had seen the truth but me. He told me we had options, that we could reopen parts of the case, that an investigation into Daniel might now be easier, that my record could possibly be expunged, that the marriage could be handled efficiently. He didn't tell me to calm down or think rationally. He spoke to me like a man who deserved justice. It was the first time all day I felt understood. With nowhere else to go, I checked into a small motel. One of those places where the wallpaper peels at the corners and the air smells like bleach and old cigarettes. I laid down on the bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. A man imagines, through his darkest moments, what freedom will feel like. You picture fresh air, open roads, the sound of your own footsteps on clean pavement. You picture the first real meal, the first real shower, the first real night without bars. You don't picture lying alone in a cheap motel room, realizing your wife had stopped loving you long before you even realized you needed her to hold on. I didn't sleep much, just breathed. Slow, steady breaths, trying to feel the simple fact that I was free. Free of the cell. Free of Daniel. Free of her. For the first time since the arrest, those words didn't hurt. When sunlight slipped through the blinds, I got up, showered, shaved, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked older, thinner, harder around the eyes, but I looked like someone who'd survived something he shouldn't have. And that version of me, I respected him. I grabbed my bag, checked out, and walked to the nearest coffee place. I sat in a corner booth with a notebook I bought from the drugstore next door, and I made a list. 1. Find steady work again. 2. Get legal help to reopen the case. 3. File for divorce. 4. Save every cent I earned. 5. Cut every thread that tied me to Daniel. 6. Get my name back. 7. Move forward without flinching. The list wasn't brave or ambitious. It was survival. But survival is the first step before rebuilding. Most people get out of prison and realize the world has moved without them. Mine had sprinted, but I had one advantage. I wasn't helpless. I had skills, experience, a work ethic prison couldn't shake out of me. I took the first job I could get, warehouse loading. Heavy, repetitive, honest work. It didn't matter that it paid modestly. It mattered that it paid at all. The first paycheck I received felt better than oxygen. It wasn't a lot, but it was mine. Every morning, I woke up before dawn, worked long hours, came home exhausted, ate simple meals, saved everything I could. I kept to myself, didn't talk about my past, didn't let anyone get close. People thought I was quiet. They didn't know my entire world had burned down and I was still walking out of the smoke. My lawyer prepared the paperwork efficiently. When my wife received the notice, she sent me a short text. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. She tried again. I didn't plan any of this. I still didn't reply. Another message. "I'm sorry. Please. I want to explain." That one almost made me laugh, not with humor, but with disbelief. You don't explain sleeping with someone's friend. You admit it, and you live with what it cost you. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. A week later, she requested a meeting. Not with me, with him. My lawyer told me what happened. She cried. She apologized. She said she was lonely after I went inside. Said Daniel comforted her. Said she made a mistake. But mistakes don't last months. Mistakes don't happen in marital beds. Mistakes don't walk freely while you count days behind bars. Her voice cracked when she realized I wanted no reconciliation. That the man who once would have fought for her had already left the room inside himself. The divorce wasn't dramatic. Cold signatures. Simple division. No fight left between us. The day it became official, I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. I didn't see him. Not at work. Not in town. Not even by accident. But word travels. People talk. And I learned a few things. He had lost his job shortly after I was sentenced. The company quietly distanced themselves from him. He had been relying on my wife financially. He had never planned anything long-term. Just convenience. Just access. Just the thrill of stepping into a life that wasn't his. When I heard that, I didn't feel satisfaction. Just confirmation. He hadn't taken my wife. She had chosen him. And choices have consequences. 3 months passed. Then 4. Then 6. Work. Savings. Sleep. Repeat. And slowly, life softened. I upgraded from the motel to a small, clean apartment. Bought some basic furniture. Started cooking again. Found a routine that didn't feel like survival anymore. At night, I'd sit on the balcony and watch the world move. People walking dogs. Kids riding bikes. Couples holding hands. A year ago, I would have felt bitter watching them. Now I felt nothing sharp. Just quiet gratitude that I wasn't living in a lie anymore. One morning, my lawyer called. My heart rate always jumped when his name appeared, part habit, part memory. But this time, his voice carried something it hadn't before. Hope. He told me new information had surfaced. Something about document analysis. Something about inconsistencies. Something that aligned with my claims that the signature had been forged. He said we could start the process of clearing my record. Not overnight. Not easily. But it was possible now. Possible is all a man like me needs. I hung up the phone and sat there for a long time, letting the future unfold in my mind. A clean name. A new chapter. A life without shadows. Slowly, I felt something I hadn't felt since before the prison bars. Pride. Not because of what had happened to me. Because of what I had done with what happened. I didn't know it yet, but my story wasn't finished. Because life, in its strange timing, doesn't let you move forward until you've seen the full truth. Until you've stood face to face with what broke you and realized it no longer has power. And that moment, that confrontation with the past, came unexpectedly. In a grocery store, on an ordinary evening, with a basket in my hand and a calm heart in my chest. I turned a corner, and there they were, my ex-wife, and Daniel, side by side, together, but not together, not happy, not glowing, not victorious, just tired, faded, thinner than I remembered, as if the choices they made had drained them instead of elevating them. And the look in their eyes when they saw me, that was the moment I realized I wasn't the broken one. I was the one who survived. And what came next, that final moment, that's where this story ends. It's strange how life brings you face to face with the very people who broke you. Not when you're wounded, but when you're finally healed enough to stand steady. It doesn't happen during the storm. It happens after, when you've already rebuilt enough of yourself that their shadows can't touch you anymore. For me, that moment happened in a grocery store. I wasn't looking for anything dramatic. I was just there for coffee and bread, two simple things that had become part of my quiet, steady routine. The kind of errands you do without thinking once your life stops spinning like a broken compass. I turned the corner into the produce aisle. And there they were, Daniel and my ex-wife, not holding hands, not smiling, not whispering like a couple in some new, unstoppable romance. Just standing side by side like two people sharing the same space out of habit, not out of love. The first thing I noticed wasn't their presence. It was their posture. He looked smaller than I remembered, like someone had taken a confident man and wrung him out until all that remained was a thin version of who he pretended to be. His shoulders sloped forward slightly, his eyes fixed on the floor as if it told a version of the truth he preferred to look at. She looked older. Not in years, but in spirit. Her face carried a quiet tiredness, the kind that settles in after too many decisions made for the wrong reasons, the kind that stays after every thrill fades. In one quiet glance, I saw the truth. They hadn't built anything together. They'd simply clung to each other while everything around them collapsed. And then she saw me. Her eyes widened, not dramatically, not with cinematic shock. More like a sudden jolt of memory she wasn't ready to face. Like a mirror she hadn't asked for was suddenly held up in front of her. Daniel looked up a second later. His jaw tightened. His breath caught, just enough for me to notice. For a man who once forged my signature without blinking, he couldn't hold eye contact for more than half a second. Funny how guilt ages a person more than time ever could. For a moment, a long, suspended one, none of us moved. They didn't approach me. I didn't approach them. But we all understood the weight of the moment. A year in prison, a marriage broken, a friendship shattered, a truth hidden. It all lived in that silence between us. And then, for the first time since the arrest, the first time since that staircase in my old home, I realized something freeing. I didn't hate them. Not anymore. Hatred requires energy. Energy I no longer wasted on them. All I felt was distance. Calm, clean distance. I adjusted the basket in my hand, took a breath as steady as the life I'd rebuilt. And I nodded, just a small, polite acknowledgement, nothing more. She opened her mouth slightly, as if she wanted to say something. Maybe she had prepared a speech for this day, an apology, an explanation, or something that lived somewhere between regret and guilt. But the words never came out. Because how do you talk to someone whose forgiveness you know you'll never fully deserve? Daniel swallowed hard, eyes darting away, unable to hold the weight of my gaze. And in that single moment, I saw how far he had fallen from the man he pretended to be. I didn't pity him. I didn't want revenge. I didn't need answers. I already had the only answer that mattered. I survived them. They didn't survive themselves. I stepped around them, not hurried, not dramatic, just calm. As if I were walking past strangers on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Because that's what they were now. Strangers wearing the memories of people I once knew. I didn't look back. I didn't have to, but I felt their eyes on my back. The stinging, heavy kind of stare that belongs to people who suddenly understand they lost something far greater than they gained. I paid for my groceries, walked outside. The air felt lighter than a moment ago. The sun hit my face with the warmth of a life finally, fully my own. As I reached my car, I didn't feel the past pulling at me. I felt it fading, softly, steadily, like a chapter I'd already finished reading. I got in, closed the door, and sat for a moment without starting the engine. A year ago, I walked out of prison feeling like a man with nothing left. Today, I drove out of that parking lot feeling like a man who reclaimed everything that mattered. Not a wife, not a friend, not a house or a name or an old version of myself. Something better, peace, self-respect, a future that wasn't built on lies or borrowed loyalty. A life that belonged to me, fully, finally, completely. And as I pulled onto the road, watching the city pass by in soft blurs of color and motion, one thought settled deep in my chest. I didn't just walk out of prison. I walked out of their story and into my own. And that, more than anything they ever took from me, was my freedom. I didn't expect the real ending to come after the grocery store. Most stories end at the confrontation, the moment you see the people who betrayed you and walk away with your head still attached to your shoulders. But life isn't a movie. You don't get a clean fade out after one powerful scene. Healing happens in layers. And apparently I still had one more layer left. A week after seeing them, my life settled back into its usual rhythm. Work, cooking, quiet evenings on the balcony. But something in me felt lighter, as if the last knot inside my chest had finally loosened. For the first time in years, I wasn't thinking about them. Not with anger, not with sorrow, just with neutrality. It was new, and honestly, it felt like peace. But peace has its tests too. The real final moment arrived a few days later, on a slow Sunday morning. One of those days where the sky is a soft gray, and the world feels like it's giving you permission to rest. I was having coffee when my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Local area code. I almost ignored it, but something made me answer. It was her mother, a woman who once hugged me every Christmas. A woman who cried at our wedding. A woman who stopped calling me altogether after the arrest. Whether out of shame or denial, I'd never know. She sounded hesitant, unsure if calling me was even the right thing to do. I could hear the years in her voice. The exhaustion, the weight. She didn't waste time. She told me my ex-wife wanted to apologize. That she knew she owed me one. that the guilt had finally crushed whatever story she'd built in her mind, that she wasn't doing well, emotionally, physically, in every sense. Then her mother said something that stayed with me. She isn't happy with him. She thought she would be, but she made a mistake. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. Not because the words hurt, they didn't, but because of how far away from all that I already felt. A year ago, that sentence would have cut me open. 6 months ago, it would have made me angry. 3 months ago, it would have kept me awake at night, turning over old memories like sharp stones. Now, I felt nothing. Not relief, not pride, not satisfaction, just clarity. She wants to talk to you, her mother added softly. Just once. There was a time in my life when I would have said yes out of obligation, out of politeness, out of some naive hope that closure comes from conversations. Now I knew better. Closure doesn't come from people. Comes from you. So I thanked her mother for calling, sincerely, and told her I wished them both well. Then I said something I never imagined I'd be able to say out loud. But I'm done with that part of my life. A quiet sigh came through the phone. Not frustrated. Not disappointed. Almost relieved. Take care of yourself, she whispered. You too, I said, and ended the call. And that was it, the conversation that closed the last tiny window in my past. I sat there for a long moment, coffee cooling in my hand, feeling the weight of a chapter finally sealed shut. Not slammed. Not locked. Just closed. Over the next weeks, something unexpected happened. My life started to feel like mine again. Not the version I had before prison, but something better. My name was in the process of being cleared. My finances were stable. My apartment felt like home, not a temporary shelter for a broken man. I'd started running again, lifting again, taking care of myself in ways I hadn't before everything fell apart. One evening, after a long day, I walked into a small diner near my place. The kind with old booths, good soup, and a waitress who called everyone Han. I ordered food, sat down, and realized I wasn't thinking about my past at all. Not even a little. My thoughts were about simple things, work projects, errands, maybe buying a new shelf for the living room. Mundane but peaceful. That was when it hit me. I had built a life that didn't include them. Not as memories. Not as ghosts. Not as wounds. Just as something that happened and no longer shaped me. It's a strange kind of power, the moment you realize the people who broke you have absolutely no place in your future. It doesn't feel like triumph. Feels like freedom. A quiet, steady freedom that's worth more than anything I lost. The last moment, the real final moment, came unexpectedly weeks later. I was leaving work, walking to my car in the late evening after a long shift. The sky was painted with soft orange light. People were heading home. The world felt calm. Then I saw a figure across the parking lot. Daniel. He looked different, thinner, older, drained. Life had taken things from him too. Maybe more than it had taken from me. Maybe that's how karma works. It moves slowly, but it never misses. He hesitated when he saw me. Then he did something I didn't expect. He walked toward me. Halfway across the lot, he stopped and raised a hand slightly, almost like a surrender. I didn't move. He looked at me the way a man looks at someone he wronged in a way he can't ever fix. His voice cracked when he finally spoke. I'm sorry, he whispered. For everything. No excuses. No explanations. No attempts to justify what he did. Just 3 quiet words that arrived too late to matter. And yet, I wasn't angry. Not anymore. The anger had burned out long ago. What remained was a calm distance. The kind you feel when you look back at the worst fire of your life and realize you're standing in clean air. I nodded once. Not forgiveness. Not acceptance. Just acknowledgement. You live with your choices, I said quietly. He nodded too. A slow, defeated motion and stepped back. No argument. No plea. No request for friendship or closure. Just a man walking away with the truth he deserved. As he left the lot, I understood something important. I didn't need him punished. I didn't need him exposed. I didn't need him broken. Life had already taken care of that. I just needed myself back. And I had him fully. When I got home that night, I stood on my balcony and looked out at the city lights. I breathed in slowly, deeply, and for the first time in a long time, I felt absolutely nothing tying me to the past. Not love, not hate, not sorrow, not longing, just peace. I didn't want my old life back. I didn't want her back. I didn't want justice against him. I didn't want revenge. What I wanted was exactly what I had. A second chance earned by surviving my first downfall. The story didn't end with the betrayal, or the prison, or the grocery store, or Daniel's apology. It ended right there, in that quiet moment on a balcony, with a man finally free from everything that once tried to break him. And that freedom, soft and steady, was worth more than any forgiveness or any apology or any closure words could ever offer. I didn't just move on. I rose, and I never looked back.